All right. Welcome everyone to Altar Building and Working with the Elemental Realms. I am Kat and I'm going to be your trusty guide today. So before I dive into our talk and all that's here to be shared, I really want to take a moment and just ground. We are going to be talking about the elemental world today, which is nature and all of the ways that it shows up and how the energies express themselves. So I would just want to take a moment and wherever you are, however you are, just to really feel the earth beneath you. And I invite everyone, if you want to just take some nice breaths, you don't have to do them in unison or in any which way, just to breathe and just to feel your body rooted and grounded on this beautiful planet. And I really want to give thanks to the Mother, Father, Earth for being here, for being a part of this world. And I really want to acknowledge the the indigenous ones of this land. I live on Akokik, former native land, and there's no longer any more tribal members of the Akokik. They are now an extinct tribal group. But it is incredible land, and I feel incredibly blessed to be here. It is such a privilege and an honor. And I really feel the magic and the medicine that has been planted in this land by these people, these beings, the inhabitants and stewards of this place. And if you know or want to give thanks to the land that you stand on and to the indigenous stewards of it, I think that's just a really good opportunity to send some blessings their way. And I just want to thank and greet any ancestors that are here, any elemental allies that are walking with you already. My guess is that everyone here has elemental energies and spirits that they work with, and that is for sure unique to you. So just taking a moment to acknowledge, to bless, to greet all these incredible beings that are here with us. They are such a deep, deep part of my work, and I'm guessing a part of all of our work if you're here. So and Angela just walked out and invited the moon. Thank you so much, Angela. What a blessing to have the moon here. I live in the woods, and last night I was taking my puppy for a walk at night, basically, and it's so beautiful because I can walk outside at night in the darkness, bathed in the moonlight, and so simple and so delicious. All right, and lastly, I want to just call in the protection and blessing of the four directions. And really, this is a sacred healing space, however it is used, and whatever comes through for you um, here and now, may it be what you need. May you find something here that can really support you and your work in this world. I am by no means the penultimate authority on any of this, but I am really here to speak into a lot of what I've learned through my work, through my spiritual work and practice. So I want to speak a little bit more into that right now, and just to set the context, because um, so much of how we see the world, our own consciousness, is informed by the context, environment, and culture in which we live. So I we are all enculturated with many different kinds of consciousness, right? That was carried by our ancestors who came from different lands and places, the places we live now, and the energies and previous inhabitants and what is all there. But with that said, in the West, right, in America, we tend to be a lot more disconnected from land. And we see that reflected in a lot of the issues around land stewardship and climate change and just, like the raising of wildness for strip malls, blah, blah, blah. So we have a very different relationship with nature, right, with the earth. And we see that reflected in our culture and how we live. And the culture that carries the medicine lineage that I work with is a very different culture in many, many ways than the ones that many of us here who are listening to this emerged from. So I would like to start this talk with an introduction to the Dagara and the Dagara way of thinking. And because I am not a Dagara myself, I was not born in Africa. I am simply doing my best to carry this lineage and the technology that it is giving us. But the Dagara are people in Burkina Faso and Ghana, which is in West Africa. And where this medicine emerged is there. Okay, so this is medicine from Mother Africa. And it is elemental medicine, which I call it elemental for many reasons, because it speaks specifically to the fact that it worked with elements, right? Nature, wind, water, fire, earth, right? And those are some of the primary consciousness is that I work with. I also work with the ancestors. There's also several groups of beings, but we're not going to really go into that today. That's just a lot for now. But I say all that because all wisdom has a root, and the root of this wisdom is informed by a way of existing that is just a different way of being. It is literally a different reality, right? Because what you have the eyes to see is going to shift what you experience in the world. So the teachings that I have been receiving through this medicine have a very, very ancient root. They go back something, there's no exact number, but it's like, I've heard anywhere from like 4,000 years, 8,000 years, 50,000 years, right? So it is a primal technology that has been in existence for a very long time. And this medicine actually came to the West through my teacher's teacher, who is Malidoma Somé, and Martini Somé, his sister. Both are medicine people, both come from a very long line of incredible shamans and medicine people rooted in this culture. So some of you might be familiar with Malidoma Somé. His work really came to the West, and there was a prophecy about that. And he speaks to this in his books, right? And his name literally means he who befriends the stranger. And, you know, it's interesting because something that I grapple with a lot is this is not my ancestral lineage. And there's not really an easy way to enter the lineage unless the beings actually invite you in. So this lineage is actually a spiritual lineage connected to many groups of beings, but two in particular that are essentially nature beings. And so I say all of that because this is not just about a culture or people. It is about a consciousness. And that's what this medicine is carrying. It is carrying a consciousness of the earth, of the ancient earth. And that consciousness has an agenda that is above and beyond anything that humans can say or do, right? It is beyond the politics of humans. And so this medicine has an agenda. It wants to leave the motherland. It already has done that. It's been here for, God, I want to say like 20, 30 years, in little pockets here and there. Malidoma worked in Berkeley, where my teacher met him. So there's a big community of Dagara diviners out there, of which I am connected to. There's another pocket in North Carolina, another pocket in New York, as well as a very, like the mother pocket in Africa. But so this medicine is here for us, and it's here for us with a very particular reason, and that is to help us mend the break that has happened, the rupture that has occurred in the West that has created separation between ourselves and nature, between ourselves and the world at large, which I think is at the root of a lot of the pain and the just challenges and the horrors that we're experiencing as we grapple with the reality of what it means to live or try to live outside of nature. So there's a lot there, but that to me is a powerful opportunity to let the earth speak through any door that is available. Medicine will do that. It will find any available door to speak through. It does not see the things that human sees. It does not have the same limitations, right? It gets to bypass all of that to simply find opportunities to heal. And so this medicine is bringing a lot of powerful healing to the places that do need it, which is a lot of people in the West. Now, the Dagara see life and the universe as a circle. It is not linear. Linear is an invention of logic, right? The logical mind, again, like the rational mind of the West. But when life is a circle, and if you see life as a circle, then you can't not operate as though you are separate, right? Everything is interconnected in a circle, okay? So when everything is in relationship with everything else, it changes how we start to work, right? I talk a lot about how humans always think of themselves as like on the apex of, they're like an apex predator, right? They're above everything. And that's really like an insidious untruth. That's something we tell ourselves, when in reality, we are a landscape, okay? We are the landscape just as much as we inhabit the land. And that to me is a huge difference in the mindset of what that allows us to see. And when we can see something, when we can see an opportunity, we can actually see possibility, right? So when you start to recognize, and not even recognize, but inhabit the consciousness of this web, um, more opens up to you, more information becomes available to you. And that is actual power in my definition. That is true power, because it is not a single source or a single direction. It is everything in all directions. And that will do far more than one apex predator, right? With their AIs and whatever. So, power of this medicine, which is, again, it's when I talk about the medicine lineage that I work with, there is no name. So I apologize. It makes it difficult sometimes to kind of talk about. I refer to it as wild medicine because it involves the everything. It involves nature. It involves that which we are physically connected with, right? It also connects us with the spirit realm too. So the ancestors, right? And these other beings. So there's all of these things kind of being woven in here. Now, again, we're not going to talk too much about the ancestors or other beings here and now tonight. But I say all of that because I want to acknowledge that just because we see this reality doesn't mean that that denies the existence of other realities that we can't see, right, in the same way. But we're going to focus today on the things, the elements that are really tangible, really present. And let's dive into that now. I want to talk a little bit about the elementals as defined by the Dagara in their medicine wheel. And this cosmology, what does it mean? Now, I think a lot of us have an intuitive, innate, right, understanding of these elements and what they communicate, right? What their energies are here, how to work with them. It's very human, right? We've been connected with them for eons. So we've evolved with the elements. So let's start with fire, right? Fire is the first element, and that's on purpose. Fire gives form to life. It's what cracks the seed so it can bloom. It is the original element and our most potent connection to the spirit world. So fire, when you think about the smoke and the energy that is released in fire, it's a thread, right? It's a channel back to the spirit world, back to the ancestors. So fire can carry our prayers. Fire can carry our voice. And it puts us, again, back in connection with something that isn't always tangible in this reality. And because it's a clarifying essence, right? Fire purifies, it can destroy. It really helps us stay on spiritual track by basically consuming that which stands between us and our purpose. So fire clarifies and removes obstructions that stand in our way. So while devastating, it is also life force. It is ancestors. And it is the thread, the energetic thread that binds us all. Because energy needs to move. Energy is movement. And so, think about how fire moves, how it just overtakes a forest, right? It has to move to live. So fire is incredible. Water. water is the second element, and um, it is cleansing, right? It is a purification essence. And we use water for a lot of religious or spiritual, like purifying baptisms, blessings, cleaning, spiritual baths, right? Like the list goes on. And that's it's obvious why, right? Because water dissolves all. And, in that, it brings reconciliation. So things that feel like opposites, right? Rock and water will once again find union. Okay. Given enough time, they return to the other. So in that there's a peace. There's whew, um, a core essence that it helps us remember, right? So it also can remove some of the like extras or the muddiness, um, in order to help us remember what is essential. Now, in the Dagara medicine wheel, the earth is actually in the center, right? And the other elements are around it. And earth is the great mother father. I don't subscribe to the idea that there's only Mother Earth. I think that I share the I forget which tribe, but a native perspective that is um, it leaves out so much of the opposite, right? Like, how could the earth just be one thing? It gives form to all things. So, in that, um, there's actually a duality. And in the Dagara lineage, when I work with earth, we actually acknowledge that there's two energies, and each one of them brings its individual essence to this idea of the earth, right? And the earth is our home. It is our source. It is nourishment. It is grounding. It is rooting, right? Um, and I'll speak into a little bit of the energies of both to kind of give you a sense. When earth comes up in a divination, and I ask it, is this the mother or the father? Right. And if it's the mother speaking, that's usually creation energy. That's usually something that's like needing nourishment, mothering, tending, grounding, rooting, the way that a mother holds you like a baby. Um, so there's something here that's being birthed, that's giving form, right? That's coming into being, and that needs care. The Father Earth, however, speaks to development, right? It speaks to how the masculine kind of holds the container, it sets the structure, right? So that's the masculine of the earth, right? It, in the same way that the seed, when planted, is entering that mother creation energy, as it becomes more developed, as it grows into a seedling and then a tree, it takes on more structure. It has to in order to support its own growth. So we can work with the earth in both ways. And I encourage you all to think about that, like how these different energies might come forward for you if you work with the earth, if you have a relationship with it. And yeah, so that's something I really love, is it really recognizing the mother, father, earth really actually kind of changed my own um, consciousness and like this conditioning around it. Okay. So mineral is the next one that I want to talk about. Mineral is mountain, right? It's stone. And stones are the record of all history, all time on this planet, right? They've seen it all, they've held it all. They have that track record. And so this, I think of the mineral or the mountain as the historian, the keeper of the story. And this energy invites us to remember. And it invites us to recognize the stories that we are telling. Like, what legacy are we laying down? And do we agree with it? Do we align with that legacy? Do we want that memory? So it always invites us back to remember who we are and why we are here, and to look at that history. Now, the last element I want to speak to is kind of interesting, because it seems like a mega element, and it's nature. It's the wild. It's that. And we might think of nature as kind of all of the things we just talked about, right? It's like the river and the trees and earth. Um, but nature is its own energy, right? If we think about it, it is the energy that drives life. And what that means is that it's constant change. And that is an essence and a consciousness that we can work with to drive our own transformation. So it really asks us to open to this in order to realize our true and authentic selves. All right. So, one thing I want to say is that answers emerge naturally from communion. When we are stuck, when we are blocked, when we don't know, it's because a part of us is out of alignment, right? And think back to a time when it's just like, you just knew, right? It just kind of came forward. It found you the answer. And that happens really easily when we're open, when we're in flow, when we're listening. So when we listen to the consciousness, the intelligence, the messages that are coming through in all forms, right? Not just the things we recognize as real, we actually start to come into a greater attunement with ourselves and our environment. We have more information available to us. Um, One thing that really helps me with this understanding is maybe some of you are familiar with the idea of Indra's net. It's a Buddhist kind of like living metaphor. And Indra's net is the idea that the whole world, like there's this beautiful net of all of these like these diamonds, right? With infinite faces. And in each one of these faces is reflected every other diamond in this infinite web. So it's sort of like one of these mind koans that helps us understand the incredible like complexity. And what I love about this visualization is like, well, actually, if we're all connected, right? It's like blockchain. You can actually share resources and information more easily. And it becomes more efficacious. So more information can move around because with everything connected, like there's a multiplicity of pathways. So we'll talk more about this as we deepen in this talk, but I really want to delay that out because, it sometimes seems like so simple for us, like sophisticated humans who have jobs and use technology and like phones, but we can actually realize a lot of answers by simplifying and reconnecting to what's real that's right around us all the time. Kind of blows my mind when I think about it. I'm like, wow, how long did it take me to like remember that? So, all right. I tend to view nature as the mother teacher. That's my unofficial like title for her. Um, I guess nature could be a him or a they too. So please ignore that pronoun. It's you know. But I say this because and nature has always been in my life. It's always been present and it's like always been there, but kind of in the background. But when I started working in this lineage, it really nature came to the foreground. And it was like, I am your teacher. And our teachers are not always who we want them to be, right? Like sometimes we're like, I really want the cool guru. But other times it's like your bully or it's the unexpected, right? It's the thing that kind of like is constantly talking with you or teaching you. And I love nature. So it's not like a bad thing that she's my teacher, but it was kind of like this duh moment of like, whoa, this this entity, this whole environment is here for me so I can learn how to become a better human. So um, when I think about like the West and how we tend to look at nature, I see a lot of human imperialism, right? I see a lot of like destructive behaviors and extractive perspectives. It's a deep hubris, it's a deep arrogance. And this arrogance makes it really difficult to see the possibilities that are available and present in our surroundings, because we don't view it as a two-way street. We just view it as something that we can harvest and own and destroy, right? And build over and plow. I'm not saying that's everyone, but I'm saying that's the dominant kind of narrative, the normative narrative in our culture. And that is just, for other cultures who have stayed closer to the earth, that would be considered an atrocity. Like, that's just like, what? Why would you do that? So we as humans have always worked with nature up until now, right? Like, and again, I'm not saying all humans, but recognizing that for 98% of human evolution on this planet, that's like millions of years, we lived very closely with nature, to the point that we didn't distinguish nature as not us. Okay. Nature was our consciousness. And that is so powerful that it's still there, right? And when we can start connecting back to it through these things around us, we access an ancient, ancient relationship that is so deeply hardwired, So it's not like we've lost it or severed it, but it does take some practice to get back into that relationship. And that's really what this talk is about, is shifting our attention, right? And not just our little flickering flea brains, but actually the devotional presence back onto nature. And I believe that is a huge reckoning and reconciliation opportunity. So let's talk about altar building, because devotion changes the shape and the texture of anything it is directed towards. Love is a curve, it is a wing, it is a rainbow. It gathers in energy. Okay? Just collects it. It literally alters matter. Okay? And thus, while it maybe like an invisible force field, has very physical impacts. They say you need something like 12 hugs a day to be functioning, to literally have baseline wellness as a human. And I think that kind of speaks to an aspect of this. So love, devotion is a powerful transformational force field. And just the practice of it grids that force field, right? Amplifies it, fuels it. And so when we start to take this idea of an altar as a place of focusing our attention, we're just becoming more present. And we're able to actually listen more deeply as a result. And the beings I work with are punsters. It's ridiculous sometimes. But sometimes what comes out in rituals is they'll talk about things and then they'll kind of point out the double meaning of a word. And I love when that happens, because I'll be like, whoa. And altar, ALTAR, right? A devotional point of attention. The other spelling of altar, ALTER, means to change, to shift. So that's something that's on purpose, that word. It operates at the same level. So what you devote yourself to will naturally shift your whole consciousness. It will expand that part of your consciousness. And when your consciousness expands, you will be able to see things and experience things that you weren't able to before. So you will actually develop a supernatural perspective and experience of the world. This has happened to me. It has happened to people I know who work with these realms in a devotional way, in a dedicated, disciplined way. But personally, myself, I don't love discipline. It has the wrong frequency for me, but devotion really works, right? Because it's the energy of love versus constraint. so, so you want to experience or have a supernatural experience of life, and by supernatural, I simply mean like there's many ways to define supernatural, but it will take on a quality of like, whoa, this is no longer an ordinary reality. It never was, but you've blown open the doorway, right? You've taken down a wall between you and the world that told you or had you believing otherwise. And the best part is that nature is filled with natural altars, places where energy collects and creates sacred space. I know you felt them. I know you've encountered them. We all have. Some of them are human moments, but a lot of them are not. So I'm just going to invite you to think back on that now. Like, ask yourself, when was the last time I experienced an altar in nature? And what comes up? Like, what just naturally bubbles up in your being? Like, I'll give you a few examples of my own, like caves, or like the like groves in the forest with like all of a sudden you kind of walk in and it's like, oh, there's a different energy here, right? Maybe you stand in front of the ocean and you feel it speak to you. It can be a big altar, right? It can be a small altar. It really is up to you. But that's what nature is asking you to notice. It's like it's so easy to walk by all of the tiny mundane miracles that are constantly unfolding in front of you. And when you start to pay attention to them, they expand. And you start to see that they're not so mundane or tiny at all. So this is what we are looking for. We are looking for a beginning place, a starting point. Now, I assume that y'all are, maybe interested in altar building. I don't think it like is a has to happen, but I think it's a place where, again, it focuses our attention so that it starts to take on a bigger significance and meaning. So I encourage anyone here to start like practicing with an altar. And today, what we're really speaking to in particular is like natural altars. So I think altars in your home are beautiful and good. I have like 7 of them. So no shade on that whatsoever. But I also, one of the most beautiful, significant devotional practices I have is a land altar that's on my land out in the forest. And it shows itself. When I first moved into my home and I was out walking the land, it's like I walked past this tree and I was like, hold up, right? It was the obvious altar. It was the obvious like grounding point for this place. And some of you have been out to this altar. It's like I love taking people to it and offering it prayers and offerings because that's what it's here for. It's literally a natural place that is collecting these energies. So I really encourage you to play with that. Altars inside are wonderful and amazing, and we love them. But altars outside have a different experience attached to them because by nature, it's like we can't make them too precious, right? And we're not going to like bring our biodegradable stuff out there. Like, crystals are fine and stuff, but it's a different experience to like find a natural place and allow it to show you how it wants to be appreciated and show you how to honor it, because that is a foundational template for your practice of life, right? So for those of you who are wanting to build your own land altar or to have an outdoor altar of some kind, or an altar that is connected to the elementals or an element that you're working with, all of these are opportunities for altars, right? So I really encourage your creativity and to let nature speak to you and through you. So there's so much to say. Okay, so going back to this idea of like what we are looking for is a beginning place, a starting point. and it will usually speak to you somehow. And I'll point out some that have spoken to me. It could be a big stump, right? Like there's some trees that kind of like take on a little like bathtub kind of quality, maybe. Could be a beautiful boulder, like a big one, right? Like a rock that you could like lay a meal on. Could be there was actually like a beautiful like old tree stump I had at one of my last properties that had been hollowed out, and I would go sit in it. That was my land altar. It could be again like a grove of trees, right? It could be like a sacred space somewhere, a cave. Um, so there's many places, but we want to start to look for those places that have um, that kind of energy already collecting. And I would guess that right now, near you, there is a place that you are already in relationship with that calls to you, that speaks to you, a place that desires to connect with you. And perhaps it already has. So you might already know the place, or you might not. And that's okay. There's only an invitation here to explore and notice and listen. So for those that might not be super close to like a wild place, like a forest or what have you, consider what is occurring in the spaces around you. Like, is there a place in your backyard, a corner of your garden? Um, it can be something man-made, like a table on your patio that you like dedicate to an altar, right? Like I know people who have like a special space carved out somewhere, in their home or in their backyard where it's like, here's the beautiful rocks that they brought back from the river, or like gifts from nature, that have spoken to them. But I really invite you all to get wild and to go out into nature. And when I lived in DC, I was in Rock Creek Park like 3 times a day walking my dog, and really started to notice these really powerful little places. Like one that I really loved, I called it the portal tree, was this tree with a hole that had been completely dug out by like an animal. And it really kind of looked like a doorway, So it could be as simple as that. But somewhere outside, finding a place close enough to you that is easy to visit on the regular and also somewhat private. Um, like not right on the walking path in Central Park. A place where you can actually sit and be with this area is really important. So in the land altar in my backyard, there's like a really kind of like mossy base, and there's almost like a little sitting patch right next to the tree. I love it. And I just like sit out there and I like talk to it, and I, speak my heart. Um, and that really helps me. The tree's not like out there like giving me the answers all the time, but it is listening, and it is helping me move through things in ways that I don't have rational, explanations for. So I encourage you to find a place outdoors that you can begin worshiping, right? Again, a slab of stone, the hollowed out tree stump, the roots of a big tree by a river, you'll find it. It's there. And you'd be surprised at what speaks to you. Now, there's many ways to make an altar. Again, like I don't like the idea. Like I'm not here to tell anyone how to do anything. I'm here to just give some ideas around how you can actually start to tune a relationship with your elemental or elementals that want to work with you. So if you feel called to like the mountain, and there's reasons why things call us, right? Like the mountain it calls to me when like I need to see my life clearly, right? Because you go to the top of the mountain to like see what's there. It's where, Moses, it's where the prophet meets God. Um, and as when you think about that, like if you're in the middle of a momentous shift in your life where you're like, ooh, that story no longer works, I'm no longer that person, you know go to the mountain. The mountain is there to hold that new story for you. So you know if there's something calling you, if the river is like, hey, come here, go, there's something there for you. And it's really behooves you to find out what, you know so when you find a sacred place, we live in a really profane kind of rushing world, right? Where this idea of like everything's kind of a transaction. And it's really not, I shouldn't say not the case. In the spirit world, there is exchange. And that's a really essential part of cultivating relationship is exchange. But it's not transactional. There isn't like a tit for tat mentality there. Just because you water the flower one day doesn't mean it's going to bloom the next. But when you find a sacred place, if it calls to you, your sacred task is to discover what it's trying to give, what it wants, what it needs. And that's really the gesture of humility and honor that is necessary to open the door, right? You want something? Come with a gift in hand. You'd be surprised, right? And we forget that. It's the same way you'd come to a friend's house for dinner with a bottle of wine. So don't just show up at the doorstep of something and be like, knock, knock, I need you. I need you to tell me the way. It's a different process. It's a slower process. And it's one that are, again, like we live in a very like zippy world. So a lot of us get conditioned out of the kind of slowness and attunement that is out there, that is the actual pace of nature. So when you meet this sacred place of yours, this new altar spot, whatever it is, it's like coming with an offering demonstrates that you are willing to listen, that you are willing to give. And that is the exchange. Okay. More often than not, the exchange of presence, true presence is enough. And again, that connects back to the devotional, right? Awareness and focusing. So try that. Just simply try being with something. But I get that that's also kind of hard. Sometimes we have like, well, we gotta go, we gotta do things. But in general, I think it's good to introduce yourself. Like state your name, talk to this being. Tell it what you are here, like you come in the name of love and healing or what have you. You can sit with it, right? We talked about that, like just being with it. You can meditate with it. And in this lineage, we talk a lot about like prayers are more effective when said out loud. Spirit can't hear your thoughts. So be in the practice, if you can, of stating your gratitude, stating your like appreciation, and stating what you need, why you are here, who you are, right? So this will naturally start to create a relationship and a recognition. And the more you show up, the more you can ask yourself, what would support and assist this place? What is the sacred role that I can fulfill? There was a beautiful story that Sophie Strand, if anyone here knows Sophie Strand, she's an incredible being that talks a lot at the intersection of ecology, spirituality, and biology, I think, something else. Anyways, but like interweaves and myth, that's what it is. So weaves these all together in a really compelling way. And she was telling the story about how she had been, like asking for a spirit creature, like a power animal, and then like the woodchuck kept showing up. And at first she was like, oh, like, where's my like swan or hawk or phoenix, like some big, cool spirit animal. But she got the woodchuck. And then one day she's driving down the highway. It's like pouring rain. It's like literally a highway, so tons of traffic. And she spots this woodchuck like up against the inner barrier. It's alive. It's like in the rain. It's like shivering and it can't cross the road. It's stuck there. And she's like, I didn't even think. I just pulled over and ran out of my car. And she's like, the woodchuck jumped into my arms. And what she said on this podcast was, she's like, I literally felt like my whole life was lived for that moment, to literally show up and traffic this little woodchuck to safety. She's like, I'm not trying to like make a messiah moment out of it, but to recognize that there are ways in which we are needed that isn't always immediately obvious to our like strategy minded, selves. So to think of yourself as in service to a place or to an energy or to a moment brings you into totally different relationship, right? It like, it's so sacred. And so when you ask yourself, what is needed here? Maybe it's water. Maybe it's like this rock has not been appreciated in like 10,000 years. Maybe it needs a little pat, and I'm like, I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe it's your tears. It can be so simple. But again, like, and I love when I see people kind of leave their sacred altars in nature, like, and, like cairns by the river, or someone like put sticks in like a cool pattern, or things like that move me so deeply, because it says, I am here. And also, like, I recognize this place. I've done something to sort of acknowledge the sacredness of this simple, mundane moment. So let yourself be guided to ideas. Like what wants to speak through you now. Oh, I feel you. She said, Sophie's story brought tears to my eyes. You are so welcome, my dear. Right? Like that to me it speaks so deeply to the necessity of our service to things, beings, energies that we might otherwise bypass completely. Something I started doing, let's see. Oh yeah, please feel free to take a break as needed. I'm going to be wrapping up soon, but there's a little bit more to say. So yeah, see, if you need to take a break, please go ahead and do so. Thank you for asking. Okay. The other thing I want to say is like a practice that I started doing when I moved into my new house in the woods was every morning when I'm walking my dog, I just greet the world. I greet the earth, I greet the water, I greet the trees, I greet them by name if I know their names, like greetings, mountain laurel. Thank you to the oak tree. I acknowledge the animals that live in the area, look at these cows, look at these horses. Thank you, thank you. The birds, the water beings, like the fairies that live here, my ancestors. And it's just a ritual of acknowledgement that helps ground me in a recognition that I am connected to all of these things. They are all part of my web. So, at the end of the day, you don't need to have the knowing of what you're going to do or offer. I think it's important to actually get out of the strategy mindset when we are practicing devotion. It's really listening to the impulse, the urge, and letting what is already there speak itself into a more perfect form, right? Like, we don't need all of the decoration of the sacred to recognize the sacred. And I think that's such an essential teaching for all of us, right? We get so performative sometimes in our spirituality. So it's like remembering that we can like literally spit on the earth as an offering. That was something that rocked me when my teacher reminded me. He's like, oh, you need a little spit. If you run out of water, you run out of ash, spit. I was like, holy crap. Right. So we have everything we need to be in devotion. And so that's, yeah, I'm not interested in giving anyone prescriptions on how to make an altar, but rather invite you to feel the altar extending from you, flowing from these other areas or energies, and to honor it. That's what gives it even more, like, that's what consecrates it. All right. And sometimes the altars will tell you what they need, right? Sometimes they're like, bring me that cool feather on your walk. Or like, ooh, could you bring us a little taste of water next time? Honor it, right? Like, these are powerful invitations for you. What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, and to even expand the definition of devotion, right? Like, I am devoted to tending the beautiful home that I live in because it nourishes me so deeply. And part of that is decorating it and making it look really beautiful and cool, and in ways that enhance the way I live in it. But It's also cleaning it, right? It's also like ensuring that I do the dishes. So that's something to also think about in regards to your altar. Sometimes your prayer, sometimes your offering is like, oh, wow, all these hikers left all this trash on the side of the trail. I'm going to pick it up. So, keep that in mind. Like our prayers, the way that we can tend something can take on many different forms. And really, all we need to do is listen to what's speaking. Okay. So I want to speak really quickly into like specific uses of the elements in altar form. So, earth altars have a very particular use. As I mentioned, I have one out in the woods, and like earth altars are about tending of a place, of a rooting of medicine. When I say medicine, it's your energies, right? Your prayers, your how are you holding something in reverence? That's medicine that feeds the earth. And I hear it all the time. The woods are always like, bring more medicine to us, bring people, bring their energy. So because it's reciprocity, right? It feeds, nature feeds us, we feed nature. Um, so soil, dirt, right? The composting aspect of the earth is a powerful reminder of life and death and powerful honoring of it. So earth altars are really like a place for you to root and plant your dreams for your life, your prayers for your life. How are you tending yourself? How are you tending your universe? It's how we tend our altar. So, if you are interested in building an actual earth altar outside or any altar outside, I recommend starting with an earth one. It is the easiest to work with. I usually find that like trees or like, you know, let's see, do I speak? Yeah. Trees is usually kind of like where I root the earth altar. So I find them to be the easiest and also the most rewarding because there's such a clear flow of energy and a very like um, kind of all encompassing one. So some things that the earth really loves that I've worked with or offered have been like, oh God, so many things: feathers, hair, spit, blood, um, milk. Milk is a really good one. Tobacco, cornmeal. Um, Ash is always really powerful. Ash is always really good protection. Water is always really powerful and protective. So those are two basic ones to really offer to the earth. But crystals, I love giving flowers to the earth. That's one of my kind of core offerings. Is I always take when I buy fresh flowers for myself, I always take the flowers out to the earth altar and I give them back. So what can you give back to the earth? So the next altar you could work with is a fire altar. Now, there's a couple ways to work with this. I do prayer fires, at my home, and I would call that sort of like the fire altar, right? And it has very specific use and purpose. So again, fire is about ancestral connection, life force, cleaning, purifying, um, kind of getting to the truth of something. So prayer fires are powerful because it literally carries your voice and your prayers up to the ancestral and elemental realms. It distributes. So that's one way to use fire altars is to actually use it to pray upon the life of your people, pray upon pray, like all that's in your world that you want to bless up. Let things go into the fire. So that's one way to work with a fire altar. The other way is to actually create an altar that is in dedication or devotion to the fire essence. And that might look like red or orange stones, finding trees that have been hit by lightning and using some of their dead branches or actually turning the tree into an altar itself. Um, I've also done like sacred fire in like a little like traveling cauldron. So that's one way. Dude, even burning sage. I tend to think of altars as a little bit more rooted, but again, big and small ways to work with these essences. And fire loves herbs and flowers and resin, right? Sacred woods like cedar, like aromatic woods. It loves prayers. It loves clear spirits, and clear spirits is what fuels the it's like the jet fuel for your prayers. So I literally like to offer my prayers out loud to the fire, and then I spit clear spirits into it, and it just goes right. So it's like a big flush, and it's just a little extra juice, to kind of clear the stratosphere. So 2 ways to kind of work with the fire altars there. Now, water altar, again, kind of several different ways that you could incorporate water into your altar. A sacred water bowl is super powerful. So I have like an altar bowl. It's like a beautiful bowl on kind of a stand, deep enough to have water in it. You want to be mindful of having water that's like standing for too long. It needs to be changed. And so, but water is where spirits gather. So a lot of different cultures will leave out little bowls of water as like just daily offerings to the spirit world, to basically be like, hey, swing on through. We're open, like, neighbors. So I actually have a little water bowl on my altar. It's right there. It's this little bowl right there. And I change it every day. And it's just a small, tiny, simple devotional action that is an offering to the spirits to say, hey, I'm open, I'm listening, and I'm giving you a blessing as well. So we would use a water altar if we're really in need of deep healing, right? If we really need to kind of replenish, cleanse, bless, purify, like water is the ultimate healer. Tears, right? Healing. So really good for like forgiveness, for grief, for anger, for things that feel stagnant or stuck. It's a really powerful element to work with when we are in the pinch of grief, transformation, shedding, repairing, rejuvenation. It helps us open and receive. It also helps us clean, right? And we need that. When we're going through big changes, it's like, oh my goodness, clean it. So a sheltered place by a water source is also a great space for a water altar. It could also be the water source itself. So, that could be you going to the ocean on the regular to make offerings. That could be you visiting the river to make your offerings, a lake. Like different water sources have different energies. And I'll speak to that now in case you want to work with an actual water source. The ocean is the subconscious. The ocean is the great like healer. So if we go to the ocean, we have big shit to work through. Like when people are asked to go to the ocean and make offerings in my divination work, it's because there's big stuff that needs to be like real, like lovingly held and worked with. So it means that there's deep stuff there. So I'd go there if you really feel like it's something that's like super chunky and you just can't seem to like break through it. Lakes are a little bit more contained. So it's a little bit more of like less of a deeply rooted problem or challenge that we're working with, and something that's a little bit like less burdensome or like less in the psyche. I'm trying to think of a good example right now, but it's not coming to me. So, but a lake is a good place, right? If we really are going for just making general offerings. Now, the river has a different power. The river is where I'd go if I really needed to do some big cleaning, or if something had to like change, right? If I'm trying to assist in a transformation for myself, right? Sometimes we feel like we can't quite get something unstuck. Go to the river, because the river is moving water, fast flowing water, and that is going to start moving things along for you. Now, the water loves milk. It loves honey. It loves flowers, coins. It loves song. It loves shells. There was a time when I would go and feed the river like ancestral meat pies. So sometimes the river needs to be fed. And sometimes you're just going to get like a little ping of like what to bring it. Trust it. So yeah, river is good for like dispersing energies. And, if you're someone who wants to use the actual water to work with your own healing, that will usually be revealed to you by the nature of the water source. And what I mean by that is, like, if let's say you're like, ooh, I really need to like kind of rebirth myself, you might go to the ocean and like go in, like submerge, and kind of do your own thing. Um, you might speak your prayers in the water. I've had to do that as well for some rituals, um, etc. So water is that's like big healing, big healing. Okay. The last kind of altar I want to speak to is stone altars, mineral altars, the mountain. So, mountains are where we go to receive the revelations that are waiting for us. They are the keeper of the story. And what's cool about the mountain is because every mountain is connected, like, to the plates of the earth. They all know your story. And every stone that you collect is connected to mountain energy. Every stone you encounter, it's not about taking it home with you. It's just any stone. So you are tapping into this timelessness when you connect with mineral energy. So mineral is really powerful if you're working on new stories, old stories, letting go of old stories. If you're calling in a new story, if it's time to start a new chapter, if you need to see something differently in your life or in yourself, we call upon the mountain, right? If you need to like gain a higher perspective, we go to the mountain. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about like, how do I want to work with this energy in my life? It could be that mountain is speaking to you and you might need to make a pilgrimage to the mountain. Sometimes this could be a spot in or on the mountain itself. I think it's always good to identify the local mountain. Some places don't have them, right? Maybe you live in the desert and there's only plateaus. Maybe you live in a place and there's just flat land like Kansas. For the record, a hill is a mountain. And this was clarified for me in many different ways when this question has come up. So for better or for worse, a hill is a mountain. But again, if you don't have any mountains near you, a stone is a piece of the mountain. It is a cell of the mountain. So you can work with that. And it's really good if you're working with mountain energy and you are at a crossroads or shedding or releasing an old story or calling one in. Speak it out loud to the stone for support, for clearing, for seeing differently, etc. Like, again, they can really support you in this. And the mountain loves ash. It loves water. It loves clear spirits. Coins, loves coins. And the warmth of your hand. So, like, this might sound weird to some people. Sometimes I lick the stones. It's like, um, so think about it. Whatever calls to you. You don't have to lick the stones. Don't lick the concrete. So at the end of the day, again, this whole talk is about how to kind of work with these energies in a way that is allowing your own intuition and instinct to help you tap back into this ancient knowledge base that lives in you and all around you. Okay. The last thing I really want to speak to tonight is offerings. And I've mentioned a few offerings already. But I think when we're doing devotional work, it can really inform us and give us a deeper language of devotion to speak when we are aware of what offerings represent. Now, this is not an exhaustive list that I'm going to share right now. It's really a beginning one. And offerings can span the gamut. So don't think this is like the only things available to you. So, as I mentioned before, ash, very powerful basic protection and power for every ritual, prayer, offering, etc. that you do. Ash is like the mainstay of all the ritual work that I do and that I offer to clients. And what it does is it basically protects your prayer. So as my teacher put it, like, these hungry ghosts can't just like come along on your prayers. So whether or not you believe in that, I just like to think of it as good, basic, like energetic hygiene, spiritual hygiene. And it sacralizes, right? So ash, when I say ash, I mean ash from your fire pit, ash from your incense, not human remains. That's not appropriate. That will actually not be good for you at all. So don't use human remains as your ash. But ash is a really powerful one. You can order it online. You can make some. You could burn some fire or some paper in like a little empty soup can if you wanted to and make ash. You don't need a lot, but it's a really helpful way to kind of ensure that your prayers are received in a good way. And that's something to make really clear whenever you're offering your prayers or offerings, is that you're coming in the name of healing. I've also mentioned water. And as we've talked a lot about, water is cleansing, healing, purifying agent. So it's really good with like grief, with anger. Ooh, if you're dealing with those things, water is a really powerful ritual ingredient or offering to have on hand. Or if you're speaking or asking for help with anything that needs healing. So water is another like basic super offering. Now, milk is really similar to water, but with like additional soothing properties. So very much like breast milk or mother's milk, it has a nourishing, soothing, thank you, couldn't pronounce that, and enlivening quality to it. So it's like water plus, like, if that makes any sense. It's like water with some extra like electrolytes for the spirit world. And what that does is it really is like a powerful balm for grief, forgiveness, or deep pain. So if there's something that's been like really like, oof, just like, like a burn on your heart, milk is a powerful offering to make because it has that soothing nature. In the same way that like when you burn your hand, you put milk on it or put it in milk. Or when your mouth is burning from spices, you drink milk. Same thing. Now, clear spirits is prayer fuel, like a little oomph or amplification of your blessing, of your prayer, whatever you're asking for or requesting or offering. It gives it like a little juice. So it's what your ancestors drank. And I mean that, like, if you have Polish ancestors, give them vodka. Um, so most cultures are some sort of clear spirits. Don't give brown spirits. Don't wine on a very case by case basis, actually, but generally clear spirits is a much more effective, powerful, and clean offering. All right, let's talk about honey. Honey is super powerful. I mean, all offerings are, but I love honey. It is a potentiator. So it's a powerful manifestation ingredient, and it increases the reach and calls in assistance when you have a big ask. So anyone who's watching this, if you're like trying to move to a new place, reach out to me because I have a great ritual for you that it's called the honey beacon to help you find a new home. So yeah, honey really like increases the reach of our prayers and brings in assistance. Flowers. Flowers are adornment, honoring, blessing, in the same way you'd bring your lover flowers or your mother flowers. I often use them when I'm making offerings to the grandmothers or when I'm honoring the divine feminine energies, right? It's just like a sweetness. So blood can be used. I would say be judicious in using blood, mostly because it's an extremely potent and binding offering. So know who you're making the offering to and be very clear. Otherwise, like, just make your oath safely. um, so women offering your moon blood can be really powerful. Let's see. Hibiscus is also a substitute for blood. If you're not down with using your blood, which is totally cool, hibiscus also works. And you can use hibiscus flowers, dried ones, to just add water and it makes like a reddish kind of liquid really quickly. And that's acceptable. Tobacco. This is a really traditional offering for a lot of native traditions, a lot of indigenous traditions. It's also used in prayer ties. It's an incredibly sacred plant. It's grounding, it's protection, it's blessing, it's cleansing. So tobacco has a very big earth energy, and I often use it for land offerings because it's also an honoring of the indigenous and ancient ones who first tended this land or who have tended this land up until me. Okay, seeds and grains. Seeds and grains are nourishment, food, abundance. If you're trying to plant new seeds in your life, if you want something to sprout, a seed is going to help you with that. Um, Sometimes coins too. They're a very similar energy because coins are usually a spiritual currency. So they are used in like wealth and abundance and generation, right? Kind of similar seed energy. Um, but yeah, I use seeds whenever I'm like trying to initiate new work in my life or initiate something new. Shells, used a lot in water offerings and also offerings to the divine feminine energies, to the grandmother energies, because they look like a yoni. So shells are super powerful. They're also kind of like a little telephone to spirit. So that's another way to think about them, is like say your prayers into the shell and offer it to the water. You'd be surprised who hears. And finally, sacred herbs and resins, like, oh, there's so many: mugwort, rosemary, blue lotus, right? Like half the stuff in your kitchen pantry, I'm guessing. Sandalwood powder, incense. All of these are beautiful sacred offerings and have been used historically for millennia in sacred spaces such as temples, altars, etc. And I like to think of these as blessings, prayers, and vision keepers, right? They're opening up our vision. They're helping our prayers and our questions reach the spirit realm with their smoke. So, and the last thing I'll say is food, like feed the beings. And, that could be like a little piece of your granola bar that you brought on the hike with you. That could be, like, um, taking some of your leftovers from dinner and making an offering to the earth, just like, thank you for this abundance. Let's see. Yeah. So there's a lot. There's like way more offerings than that. You can give hair. Hair is really powerful and binding. You can give spit, as I've mentioned, tears. Give your voice. Give your voice to the earth, right? If you're trying to release grief. So many ways to make offerings. And again, like I hope that this has been helpful and sort of starting to seed different ideas and tools that you can use as you start to deepen your own relationship with the elemental realm. Because at the end of the day, the exchange of energy is what's most nourishing. So when you are a reciprocal part of that exchange, you get more back. It's an amazing little mechanism. Okay, y'all. Wow, we're almost done. We literally have like 3 minutes left. Okay. And the last thing I want to emphasize, when you make offerings, as you are working with these beings, entities, intelligences, consciousness, right? Speak your prayer out loud. I feel like this is something that a lot of people get really shy about, I myself included. When I first started, I was like, oh my God, who's going to hear my prayer? Well, the earth for one, the beings that you work with for two. So be in the habit of speaking it out loud. And the more you do it, the more natural it's going to feel. And it's really important, right? It's really important that you yourself verbalize your prayers, your desires, your intentions, your gratitude, because in that vocalization, it becomes real. So do not forget the power of your voice. It is one of the most powerful spiritual tools available to you. All right. And last thing I'll say, speak to the spirit world like you would a trusted elder, right? These are beings, consciousnesses that have been around for millennia. You are a tiny ant next to them. And to come to them with that level of respect and reverence is what will open the door. All right, y'all. That's what I came here to share with you tonight. And I want to leave a little space for questions. Please feel free to like raise your hand, speak it out loud, put your thought in the chat, your question. I'm here for it. And yes, see, I can definitely send you my notes. I kind of went off my notes a lot. So my actual recommendation for you is like, if you have like a transcription, like Otter AI is the one I use, you can throw this whole recording in there and it will transcribe it for you. maybe I'll even do that as a service to y'all. That way you'll get what I said tonight, because yeah, I went way off script in my notes, but there's new things that wanted to come through. So amazing. Okay. Last call for questions, y'all. I'm here for it. If you have any, I want to be able to provide you with the tools or resources or guidance that's most helpful to you in your practice. You are so welcome, C. Oh man. All right, y'all. Well, since there's no questions right now, I'm just gonna start closing out, and I want to speak my gratitude. Sharing these teachings and what's been coming through in my medicine work is one of my favorite things. And it means so much that y'all are here, that you're interested in learning. And I know a lot of you are involved in your own work in a really beautiful way. So like, I bow to you. I bow to your spirits and your beings and your work in this world. And really hope that this has been supportive and that you found something nourishing here tonight. So let's see. You are so welcome, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you were here. And yeah, y'all, I'm going to follow up with this recording so you'll all get that. And please, please, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about any of this. I could literally talk about this all day. So it's not a bother. It's a pleasure. All right, my friends. If that is all from y'all, that's all from me. And I am going to bid you a beautiful night. Many blessings. Thank you so much. And I will talk to y'all. Oh, we have a question. Okay, see, come on up. Speak it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was like, I feel like I didn't have a chance to think of questions. You're like, oh, no questions. I was like, wait, I haven't even had a moment.
Oh, see, you came off. I'm sorry. The mute turned back on.
Oh,
There we
so
go.
the first thing that popped into my head was you mentioned a few of your rituals, a few of elements of the rituals that you like to do. And I guess I was curious about which ones you have the most consistent practice with and what that looks like. Just out of curiosity.
That's a great question. I tend to be someone who has ebbs and flows. So as much as like there's a part of me that would love to have like a really organized ritual rhythm every day, it's just not feasible for my energy and my flow. So what I have found is that I like pick up things for certain periods of time to kind of work with them, and then when they're done, I let them go. Like that sometimes they just like disappear without me even noticing. So right now I'd say the most consistent one has been the greeting of the land, the elements, the beings in my like region every day on my morning walk. And that just really helps ground my gratitude. Like sometimes like I find a lot of like gratitude sort of practices sometimes a little bit too mental for me to really like ground into the frequency. But that one has been really nourishing and just kind of reminds me that I'm part of a much bigger system and environment. I'm trying to think, what else am I doing right now? Oh, I am giving a lot of sorry, I just laughed because okay, I'll finish what I was saying, then I'll say the next thing. I'm doing a lot of like thanking of the land when blessings come through and when healings happen, whether for me or on behalf of someone in my community that like has come to me for support of some kind. So what was it? Oh yeah, the other day I did like a shamanic journey for some people, and some of the people present had really powerful experiences and shared them with me, and I was like, wow. And when I got home that day, I went out to my land altar and made, a little ring of ash around the whole tree and sat on that little like mossy area, and I just spoke to it what had happened. right? Like, thank you for helping this person like connect with this part of themselves. Thank you for assisting that person with this healing. Because it like these are all, if these intelligences are supporting us, then it is closes the loop to speak it back. And it also kind of again recharges that engine of like reciprocity and mutuality. So that's something I'm doing. I am really listening to a lot of like instinctual like pings when I get them. Like the other day, there's all these like little fairy holes in my woods, like little holes in the trees. And I think of them as fairy holes. And then the fairies came in and they were like, excuse us, you need to come say hello and like bless our little like holes. I call them fairy pussies now. So all the fairies were like, bless our pussies. And I was like, I'm on it. Um, so the other day I like went out with my ash jar and I just like spoke to all the little holes. I was like, thank you. And just like said thank you to the fairy kingdom like over and over again because they wanted to be acknowledged. Um, so I offered that example too, because I feel like there's what we can sometimes be like, oh, I need to do this. I need to go and like make this offering to the river. But I think it's really interesting to also like see when we get those little like instinctual hits that are like, now it's time for me to go to the river. So I would invite you to not hold your ritual practice with too much like uh rigidity or with too much like restriction, but kind of find an ebb and flow with that. So yeah, does that answer your question, C?
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
I love all of that.
Yeah. Bless the fairy pussies, everyone. Like um to the point of what I forget who offered it earlier. I think it was Angela. You know, last night when I was walking, there's like this beautiful full moon, and I just felt really called to like be like, I am here to receive your blessing, moon. I was like, whatever you got, I'm open. And whether or not I like got a moon blessing or not isn't the point. I don't know if I did. I like to think I did. But it was just in that moment of like recognizing that there is this incredible expression of energy and life force like right
Mm,
in my field. Um, so I feel like the acknowledgement can really turn anything into like a precious sacred moment.
mm. I feel curious about Elizabeth and any ritual practices that Elizabeth has, or if she wants to share, and maybe I can share some of mine. I haven't thought of anything yet, but I don't know. There's something I feel like called to like have like like a converse, a little bit more like interactive vibes. Um,
Elizabeth, do you feel called to share?
Can you guys hear me okay?
yeah.
Um, it's funny because whenever I hear you speak, I think I don't trust myself when those impulses come. Or like when I take the dogs for a walk in the morning, I kind of feel like doing the same thing and I do it a little. But hearing you talk about it makes me feel more like having the permission to do it, if that makes sense.
Mm,
And like my intuitive side, I've drowned it for so long. And when things pop up, I'm like, oh no, that's a silly idea. So I find myself running around talking to nature all the time. And then I'll be like, ooh, if anybody saw that, they'll think I'm nuts. So I really appreciate all of these ideas. And I have one little area by my front porch where I like pile up rocks and kind of sit and think. And so I definitely am going to try and make that an outdoor altar and spend more time with it. But in general, I would say I don't have a lot of rituals right now, and I really want to develop them. So this was a beautiful topic for me.
Mm,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for sharing, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you for that invitation, C.
yeah.
Elizabeth, I wanted to share real quick that a lot of us are disconnected from our instinct. And that is part of like the Western,
Oh, I can hear you.
like rational conditioning. Oh, can you not hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry. It says internet connection unstable. Um, a lot of us have been disconnected from our instinct because of the way in which our culture is organized. So I don't think you are at all alone in feeling like silly when you get those hits of inspiration or guidance, whatever it is. But I think what a beautiful awareness to like notice that and to give yourself that permission. Like I've had moments where I've literally been by the river, like rubbing like, honey on my old pair of underwear, and I'm tossing it in the river, and like some guy on the trail, like was like looking at me, and I was like, like, you know, so
Something else that comes up about that is what I find is when I spend time in nature, like when my daughter and I go backpacking, the connection gets deeper the longer I'm there. And so like making space and time for that, because it's like I shed the fear and I get more and more in tune and connected. So I want to have daily rituals that keep me remembering even when I'm in the regular world, but also I want to have more time. And like just today, going in the woods with my dogs and they're just running around everywhere, so excited. I could feel the energy, like seeing them be so in tune makes me get more in tune. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is exciting out here. Why was I so turned off for a minute to it until I saw them?
Mm.
It reminds me of your workshops, both of you guys, actually. So thank
Oh.
you. There was one more thing. When you came back from interfusion and you thanked them for the blessings that we encountered during your workshops, I would not have thought to do that. So that was a really beautiful way to remember. I did wonder when you were talking about the spirits and how strong they are. This is a silly question, but it's kind of like when I went to Japan and I didn't know how to act at first. Is there anything that we need to be careful about where we would be just disrespectful without meaning to be?
mm, that's a beautiful, important question. Thank you for asking that. My teacher would say, like, there's nothing like, there's a lot of perspectives on this, is what I want to start out by saying. And I would say most spirits are not to be like feared, right? Like, especially the elementals, like, you don't need to fear the mountain or the water or the fire. Um, but always be respectful. Like, there are some spirits that have, and I'm speaking specifically to non-elemental entities, like I'm speaking about like dragons. Different beings have different energies and different powers and can take time to build relationship with. In general, I would say a baseline approach of respect. Um, Ash usually feels like a enough protection to kind of give your prayer like a ground that's solid. I always like to basically state out loud, like, I come in the name of healing. That's kind of the most basic. You can put your own spin on it. In my lineage, we say, I walk with a white heart and a white belly, which again means like I come in good, like intentions. And naming that is really important. And then the other thing I want to say is, like, I don't do work with spirits at night. It's not that you can't, it's just that it attracts a different kind of spirit. Like, there's different energies that you can feel it, right? So I think for most people, doing your rituals or your prayers or your offerings through any entity or spirit or element, right, is better done in the day, because there's just a lot more clarity in like the energetic field. And the morning is usually the most powerful time to make offerings. You don't have to only do it in the morning. I rarely, if ever, can get out of my house in the morning to do them. But if you're trying to make a big prayer and you're trying to put a lot of good juice behind it, I would get my butt out of bed early. That's what I would do.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you for all of that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. see, is there any, I do want to probably have to close this in the next couple of minutes or so, but I was curious if any rituals came through for you that you wanted to share.
Um, yeah, I guess I have not like a daily ritual, but I have this ritual when I go back to Abrams Creek, which is a campground. I don't know if either of you know about New Culture. Um, but yeah, that's where they have the retreats, and it's on a creek. So I find every time I go there, I have to see the creek. I have to sing to the creek. And it's just one of those things that like I just kind of was like looking over my shoulder, like, well, here it goes. Like, I'm gonna talk to the creek again, like, and scream. Sometimes I scream into, usually I scream at the creek, but I feel like I'm screaming into like the trees, like the trees are like, or something. And yeah, it's so powerful, and it's so cathartic, and it's so it really does, like what you were saying about the rivers just taking away blocked energy. Like I really felt that. And when you said singing to the stream, the river, it's very validating, because no one told me to do that. It's just kind of an impulse. And yeah, I really like the idea of having a cup of water. So I think that's something that I can bring. I think I've always been drawn to water,
Mhm.
and not really knowing why. It's not like in my sign or anything. Like I don't even think I have any water in my sign. Um, but um, but yeah, I think that I'm working with some really old wounds, some like
Mm,
ancestral. I'm doing a lot of ancestral work. I feel
mm,
that. Um,
mm,
I like the idea of having a little cup of water that I can work with. So I'm gonna try that moving forward. Just a little touchstone for like every day. Um,
mm,
so
mm.
yeah, thank you for all the ideas. I'm excited to like read the notes. That really helps me to process information. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I appreciate the offering to make a transcription, because that's gonna be huge for me.
I'm same. Like I need to like actually see it with my eyes to like fully internalize the information.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you. Like I appreciate the invitation to like make this more accessible too. Um, and I love see like you singing to the river just feels like such a heart song, like a true offering. And they're all true offerings, right? If they come from the heart. But like I really want to underline that like it can be as simple as offering your voice in, yeah, or your
Oh, I'm gonna
scream.
start singing to my cup. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Like, yes, I'm so excited for this ritual, because I do want to sing more, and um that just popped into my head, to sing to my little cup of water.
Yes, yes, yes. I think if there's anything I would love to be able to take away from tonight, it's like follow those impulses, even if they seem totally off the wall, you're like, oh my God, you want me to do what? So I think that's like how inspiration and that's how these beings build trust with us. Is like they're like, are you listening? And if you say, yeah, I'm listening, I don't know what the hell you're up to, but like I'm here, they're gonna be like, cool. So I love that you're trusting it's seen. I love that you're like excited by it. Like, yes. Mm. Well, this has been so lovely. I think you I think you all are in the Ancient Future Ritual Collective group on Facebook, but like, see, I love your question of like, what does your ritual practice look like? And invite y'all to like ask these questions out loud because, um, yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are super curious and they're just like, I don't know like, you know, like there's so much to ask and people don't always know how to jump in, but your input and ideas and inquiries are so invited and welcome.
Elizabeth says I'm listening.
Mm. Oh, well, y'all. How do we feel about closing out this beautiful space and going our ways for the night? Do we feel complete on questions?
Absolutely.
That's good.
Awesome. Well, y'all, I send you off with so much love, such appreciation. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to what is trying to speak its way through you. And please, again, reach out or share what's happening in your world. I'm always so curious to see like what unfolds as a result of people's ritual devotional practice. And speaking from personal experience, and I know C, you have deep experience with ritual as well. It's been nothing short of incredibly powerful and healing. So, all right, my dears.
Thank you so much.
Ta-ta for now. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.